Hello, hi, and welcome to episode number 23 of an Italian knitting podcast. My name is Francesca. I'm an Italian knitter. I'm also a software engineer. I live in the northeast of Italy with my husband, our daughter, and our cat. And we're currently on vacation. So what you see here, the different background than usual, is actually my daughter's bedroom in our summer rental house. We've actually been here throughout our weekends since May, maybe since May of this year. We've been visiting quite every weekend. This rental house is very close to our regular city house, like a regular place where we live. It's a very short car ride, so we've been here quite a lot, but currently we're stable here. We're enjoying a couple of weeks, even more actually, maybe even a month of staying at this summer house. I kind of want to call it beach house, but it's not on the beach itself. Like, it's a short bike ride to the beach, so we can get there quite fast. I guess it's a summer house. My husband and I have been working from here for a few weeks, and our daughter has been with her grandparents, my parents. It's been very convenient. I really like it. You get to work from a very fun environment. You know, when you're done with your work, you close your laptop and you can get to the beach. I'm very privileged to be able to do this month, and I'm very grateful for this arrangement, this situation. And this week I'm actually off from work as well, so I get to record this podcast. I have some time. I also have a couple of other bits that are knitting admin related. One, for example, is that I will be shipping out the prizes for my giveaway winners. I've selected these people, or I guess I've opened the giveaway 2 months ago. I do things quite slow when they're admin related. I kind of stretch things a little bit, but let's not dwell on that. People that won the giveaway will receive a set each of Sandnes Garn line, and of course they can do whatever they'd like with the Sandnes Garn line. I've used a couple of bowls of Sandnes Garn line recently for my Italian summer scarf, so they could do that, whatever they'd like. And 3 winners have been contacted, or I guess they contacted me. I have their address and I will send out their packages this week. However, a couple of winners did not contact me, so I selected a couple of new winners. And the fun thing, I guess interesting thing, is that the first 3 winners, I just gave them the chance to pick what color they would like. Each winner that contacted me got the chance to select their preferred color, and none of the 3 winners that contacted me selected the green shades. Dun, 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 dun. And so these are kind of the leftovers choices, and so I've drawn a couple of winners that actually gave these preferences in the original comments, so I hope that they will receive these ones and be happy. Yeah, so on the screen you're now seeing the new winners for these 2 sets, and if these people also don't contact me, I'll figure something out. Either I keep these beauties for myself, or I'll do maybe a giveaway over Instagram. I'm not sure. The thing with YouTube is that I cannot easily contact the winners myself via a private message or anything like that, because there's no such thing on YouTube. So I just need to wait for them to contact me on my email, and so that's why it's a bit tricky and people might not actually claim their prizes. I don't know, we'll figure it out. For next giveaway, when that will come, we'll do something better. But for now, please, new winners, contact me via email and give me your address for these prizes. And cool, we can actually dive into the podcast content. And we're not striving very far away because we're talking about Sandnes Garn line. I I'm showing off my first finished object for today. This is the Sauble Tank by my friend Erin from the Korean Knits podcast. This is a tank top that features maybe diamond shape motif on the sides, even on the back. It's an awkward pose probably, but you can see there's a diamond shape motif. It's a mix of lace and cables, and I wasn't able to memorize it while working on it, but charts are very easy to follow, so you can just have your chart there and follow the stitches and the motif that you need to reproduce. There's also a good amount of lovely stockinette in the middle of the two motifs. And so you can kind of relax, take a break, take a breather, and then start with more lace and cables. And actually, I should say that the cables are, is it called 1/1 or one by one cable? As you can tell, I'm not a cable knitter in the slightest, and so I don't know the terminology. But what I mean to say is that cables are just one stitch that goes over the other or under the other, and so you can do that without a cable needle. So it just means that you just have your two regular knitting needles. See, this is how you knit with your knitting needles, and you can just do everything without an additional little cable needle to place the stitches on hold. You can just go with no additional tools. That's what I mean. So it's actually the easiest cable that you can do probably. And as I mentioned before, I knitted mine in Sandnes Garn. I have so much of this colorway, and this is actually part of like 3 bows that I have left over. I wanted to make a beach bag or like a lacy bag for the summer, but I'm kind of tired of summer knits, so we'll see. Maybe this will wait for me for next summer, not sure. So it might be the last olive green Sandnes Garn that you see in a while, maybe. The pattern actually is the first pattern from my friend Erin, and it was a test knit for me, but the pattern is already out, so you can already purchase it. And also you can already see a lot of finished projects from other test knitters or knitters now, since the pattern has been out and people have been knitting on it. And it's also a pretty fast knit because it's worsted weight yarn. It has a pretty loose gauge. It's not one of those like 28 stitches per 10 centimeters like camisoles that take you 3 summers to get through. This should go by fairly fast, or I guess it did for me, although you need to pay attention when you do the lacy beads. And I remember Erin saying that this is her favorite, absolute favorite shape for a tank top for the summer. And I know Sari Nordland has a few of these shapes for tank tops, and a lot of people love this shape. I am not 100% sure this is my preferred shape for a tank top. I do quite like the drape of the linen, and I think it fits well, this style of tank top, but I have quite muscular arms, and I've mentioned before that I'm a little bit self-conscious, is that the word? Self-conscious about my upper arms. And I feel like this tank top shows them off a little bit more than what I would like. However, I've been loving the fact that I can wear any bra underneath this, any swimsuit, any sports bra, anything that you'd like underneath this, because the straps are so thick and wide that they will cover everything for you. I don't have a lot of chest to be supported, so I don't technically need very thick strapped bras. However, I do like my relaxed sports bra, and so sometimes they do have a little bit of a wider strap, and this is perfect. And one thing I've learned, just in case you needed any advice from a newbie cable knitter, but if you're planning to knit this top or any other cable-y top or knit, one thing that I remember feeling very smart about was that I was using a smaller needle as my left needle, and so on my right hand I would use the proper needle size that's needed to achieve gauge for me, but your left hand needle can be anything, right? Like as long as it's smaller than your right side, it doesn't have to be exactly the same match. So I have interchangeable needles, circular needles, so I just used a smaller needle on my left hand, and that meant that the cables were a little bit easier to do because the stitch had a little bit more room to breathe, and I guess room for me to stick the needle in there and do the cable-y bit. And I think like the trick of using a smaller needle on your left hand is also, I think, useful when you're doing twisted rib, like fully twisted rib, when you're like knitting through the back loops of all the stitches. Or I don't know, if you're doing like things that feel very tight while knitting, like, I don't know, maybe knitting 3 stitches together or knitting 4 stitches together. So maybe some lace patterns would have that, and I would recommend using a smaller needle on your left hand. The neckline is very comfortable. It's not deep at all, although you could adjust it to make it a little bit deeper if you wanted. And I actually know that Erin is, I think, coming up with a vest version of this. So this already, I think, looks pretty much like a vest. It has the right vest shape, but I think she'll make a few adjustments to make it look like a vest, and you'll get it as part of this tank top pattern. And I think the diamond motif will be featured on upcoming designs. I think maybe a sweater or cardigan. I know Erin has plans to, I wanted to say reuse this, but I guess like feature this laciness, goodness on more designs. So you'll see it again. Cool. That was it about the Sauble Tank. Goodbye from the Sauble Tank. And the second and last finished object that I have today is my Tolsta Tee. This is from the Crea Bea or Rebecca Claw, and it is a very straightforward raglan tee pattern. You've seen this before, I'm pretty sure. It has a fairly wide neck if you do follow the recommended stitch counts, and I did. And so I do quite like that it's a little bit like, I don't know, it's not a wide neck, also because I put some elastic in it, but it is quite comfortable. It doesn't ride up at all. It leaves your neck free to breathe, I guess, just like to be cooled down by the breeze, by the summer breeze, if you have some where you live. And in the last episode, this was in progress, and I actually had quite short sleeves. I had bound off the sleeves with a fancy tubular bind off where you do the 2 rounds of double knitting, and I did the Italian sewn bind off. They were all ready to go, and I feel like they were too short, and also I had extra yarn to use, so didn't want to put up with short sleeves if I had enough yarn to make them the length that I wanted. And also the bind off was too tight. I've struggled with bind off tightness throughout my knitter life. My sewn bind offs are very tight, not very tight, but like somewhat tight. And so especially around your arm, you don't want, I guess I don't want like a tight bind off. It doesn't bother me as much if we're talking about the cuffs of a very long, like a long sleeve cardigan or a long sleeve sweater, because I don't need any stretchiness, I guess, in my wrist. Like it doesn't bother me as much. But since it was at my arm, and we did say that I have quite muscular arms, it felt very tight. So I lengthened the sleeves since I had enough yarn. And I also did a very lazy stretchy bind off in pattern. I didn't go with the sewn bind off at all, and so I did the knit the knits and purl the pearls while binding off, but I did sneaked in there yarn over every couple of stitches, and so that gives you more more thread in the bind off row, because you are introducing a yarn over here and there. And I can link tutorial down below. I think I technically don't follow all the recommended steps of a fancy stretchy bind off. I just kind of throw a yarn over in there while binding off in the bind off row here and there. So yeah, I'll link I'll link a proper tutorial, which is not what I followed, I guess. The bind off at the bottom is the same. I'll show you a little bit closer so that you maybe can spot if this bind off is good enough for you, or if you want to stick with the fancy stone bind off, in case that is your preference. But yeah, you might be able to see like an extra, I guess, bind off row. It's not a bind off that rolls underneath the fabric, but I think it's definitely good enough for me. Are you seeing something now? Who knows? Is it an awkward pose? Probably. And the length, actually I made my usual kind of a t-shirt length, where I can tuck the t-shirt in my shorts and kind of made it look like this. The yarn is a DK weight yarn from Mondial. It's called Basic Cotton, and that's exactly what it is and what it feels like. It is a pretty basic cotton, although it was quite smooth to work with. It like glided on my needles. It wasn't stiff. I feel like sometimes cotton is quite stiff and not pleasant to work with, but this was. I don't have the ball band, but I'll put a name here. I'm assuming this is treated somehow to make it feel this smooth, or maybe it's a particular type of cotton that feels quite nice and soft. Either way, if I find something similar in the future, I might grab it. So for this shirt, I made a couple of modifications. I think the main one is that I knitted this with a tighter gauge than recommended, mostly because I had enough yarn to make this fabric, which is a fabric that I do like. I didn't want to make it any looser. The pattern does recommend a looser fabric, but the pattern is also a raglan pattern, which you can just adapt to your body by trying on your in-progress piece of fabric and see if it's time to if it's time to split for the sleeves here, and by trying it on and see like is the yoke depth enough, is the sleeve circumference enough. So I would say you have my permission or guess recommendation to go ahead and knit this at any gauge that you'd like, and just trying it on and see if it fits you and if it's time to split for sleeves and move forward. Although if you do want to follow the pattern and go with the recommended gauge, that's even easier. So feel free to do that too. The other modification is that I used half twisted rib for my ribs. You probably maybe spotted it before when I was showing off my bind off, but this is half twisted rib. Where can you see it better? It's half twisted rib. It's a very simple modification. I don't know if it's even a modification because it's just a slightly different rib than 1x1, and I do like this quite a lot. I would probably replace it anywhere for like in place of a 1x1 regular rib, because my rib personally is not the neatest. It doesn't feel very consistent in the look of it, and I feel like half twisted rib, where you knit through the back of the knit stitches and do your regular purls, it looks the best. for me, like for my personal knitting style, this rib 1x1 twisted this 1x1 half twisted rib is the best looking rib that my hands can produce. So you can try it if you want to. I made the same on all ribs, bottom and sleeves and the neckline. For the neckline, as I mentioned before, I did put some elastic, very, very thin elastic. This is from Petite Knit, from her website. I just ordered it a few months ago, together with maybe a project bag. I don't remember, but many other places have very thin elastic that you can thread through your necklines or other parts of your garment. So if you can find some of that, I think it's useful to have it in your Notion pouch. That's how you say, right? Like to have around to tweak necklines or things like that. And I've actually used elastic in place, like instead of maybe do a little bit of crochet reinforcement inside the neckline, because I feel like this was actually easier, like just thread an elastic and call it a day. And I did not have a crochet hook with me at this house when I finished this shirt, although I did have the thin elastic. So, and the only problem, or the only thing, is that you can see the elastic if you look quite closely. I mean, one of the reasons is that this is not a double folded collar, so I feel like it's super easy to thread some elastic in a double folded collar because it'll be completely hidden inside the neckline. But since this is like just a one layer of fabric, if you do thread an elastic in, it might show a little bit here and there. I personally couldn't care less. It's the white thin elastic, and this shirt is like a gray, pearl gray color, so I think it's okay if some white elastic shows through. You might disagree with me, but I do what I want. And I think this elastic will stay. Maybe when I'm back in my regular like city house and I have that 100% availability of all my knitting tools, and including a crochet hook, maybe I can try to do a crochet reinforcement inside the collar instead of placing the elastic. But I don't see myself be bothered by that. And I'll put a link for the crochet reinforcement if that's a thing that you want to try in your neckline. It's just going inside of the collar and do a little bit like chain stitch. Is it called chain stitch? Probably not, but like the easiest stitch that you can do with a crochet hook. And you just add a little bit of reinforcement in the inside of the collar, and you can do it maybe just at the back or maybe at the sides, and it just pulls the neckline a little bit tighter. And it's good if your neckline, like mine, was a little bit maybe too wide or too flaring out. So that's also another possibility instead of the elastic. And if you do that method, it doesn't show through because you probably make it in the same yarn that you used for your garment, or maybe a similar colored yarn, so it doesn't actually show through. And that will be it for this specific Tolsta Tee. However, I have another one. The other one is in progress though. So we're moving on to in progress stuff. We're done with finished objects. And the in progress wrinkly Tolsta Tee is this one. This is the fingering weight version of this pattern. They have, I don't think you can tell, but maybe, I don't know. They have the exact same shape. They're both like, they follow the exact same measurements. However, this one that I'm holding in my hands has tighter gauge than the pattern for the DK worsted weight version. And in this case, I did the same modification. So I did half twisted rib for the collar and I will do the same for sleeves and the bottom when I get there. And I also am working with a tighter gauge than the pattern recommends. I think for the finger weight version of this pattern, the designer, Rebecca Claw, recommends 24 stitches per 10 centimeters, which is I think on the looser side of finger weight gauges. I have it. The Cumulus Tee, which I have many samples, or I guess many finished objects of, it's 28 stitches per 10 centimeters. So it's a fairly not dense fabric, but it's good fabric. It feels like fabric. The original pattern for the Tolsta Tee is 24 stitches per 10 centimeters, so quite loose. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of in the middle. This is a 26 stitches per 10 centimeters gauge, so a little bit looser than the Cumulus Tee that I love to wear, but it won't be as loose as the pattern recommends. So I think this is good in between choice. It's actually working up quite fast-ish compared to Cumulus Tee or other, I don't know, patterns with a tighter gauge. So it's a good compromise. I will try it on for you, of course. I did not consider the fact that this is not long enough to cover my torso. Is that torso? My belly? Either way, I just wanted to give you the idea. It looks, I think, very similar to the shape of the gray Tolsta Tee that I had before, so very similar shape. I'm knitting this in Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. This is the color Copper. I was eyeing this colorway, specifically Copper, since I think a couple of years. I've seen a Cumulus Tee in this color in the past, and so this went into my mental wish list of yarns and colorways that I wanted to get my hands on, and I finally have it, and I'm finally knitting a shirt in this color. So this is my second bowl. I have 4 bowls, and I think I'll use 3 and a little bit more. So I'll have some leftover yarn. I'll figure out what to do, but yeah. And I do hope that you see this finished next episode and this doesn't linger unfinished until next summer. I would like to get this done and blocked and ready to be worn, at least in September. End of summer is pretty mild and warm here in Italy, so if I finish this in the next couple of weeks, I have plenty of time to wear it before putting it away during the winter time. I guess technically you can wear knitted tees and knitted things, camisoles and tops underneath your winter garments. I don't typically do it. I typically have a cotton store-bought short underneath my woolly sweaters. I don't love to have knit on knit. Maybe I can try. Either way, I was picturing this more of a summer knit and I would like to wear it in the next couple of weeks, so I'll do my best to wrap this up. This project has been living inside my Petite Knit bag, and I think this is the maybe ball of yarn that I should have showed you. It has a nice label as well, but again, this is Copper and I love it. I really love it. I think it looks so good. It's like a rusty copper color. This is also the only project that I have or had on my needles that I'm happy to bring to the beach to do some knitting on the beach. This is fairly dry, it's not like sticky, you can knit on it without just have sweaty hands at the thought of knitting, which sometimes happens if you have a wool in progress object. So yeah, if you're thinking about knitting on the beach itself in warm, very warm weather, knitting for olive pure silk is a good choice. It's very thin, it's very dry. It should help you. Okay, and do you remember when I mentioned that the pure silk is perfect to knit with on the beach? Well, I would not recommend Sandnes Garn Double Sunday for your beach knitting needs. This is the ball of yarn. This is merino, and if you are familiar with Sandnes Garn Sunday, this is Double Sunday. So it's a DK weight version, and I'm using, or I picked a lovely electric blue shade, which I don't have any knitted garments in this color, but not even other garments that are store-bought. So this is the first for me, and I really like it. The design is a test knit. It's a pattern from Kolibri by Johanna. So technically, I guess she's Johanna, but her designer name is Kolibri by Johanna. And we're talking about a high-ish neck here in 2x2 ribbing, and the 2x2 ribbing is carried downward over the raglan increases, and so you keep knitting this band, and you will also see it throughout the body of the sweater, I guess. I'm also sweating quite a lot, so maybe I can cut this short a little bit. Apologies. Hopefully you'll see this done by next episode, and it'll be a little bit chillier and not this warm, so I can model it for longer, but this is it for now. I'll put pictures around here of the finished garment from the designer, and maybe you can get a better sense of how it look like when it's finished. One thing that I love is that it will have a split hem, which I never do. I don't know why. I think it looks very good, so I'm excited to try. And I actually had to buy this sweater quantity for the test knit, because the only DK weight sweater quantity that I had in stash that would have worked for this gauge and for this test knit is the combination of the Sandnes Garn Teen Pure Gint and their mohair, so the teen silk mohair. However, this is a little bit prickly, not prickly, maybe rusticy. This is not the right word, but the Pure Gint, which they also have a thicker version, it's not merino. This is wool. What type of wool? Norwegian wool, maybe? But it's a little bit rougher on your skin than the Double Sunday that I ended up ordering and I'm currently using. And so I would not recommend this for myself, on myself, for a high neck. So this combination of yarns would not have worked for a high neck for me specifically. So I will repurpose this for a cardigan, I think, in the future. Cardigan that doesn't touch my neck and it just covers my body and arms, and I think it will work very well. I had actually bought this for a colorwork sweater, which I didn't end up prioritizing at all, and I don't think it's in my near future, so I think I'll just use this for a cardigan. Double Sunday is very soft and I have no problem holding it very close to my neck, so I think it was a very good choice for a high neck sweater like this one. I had actually tried a long tail cast on for the collar and it didn't look very good, or at least when I do a test knit, this will sound very professional. But like when I do a test knit, I feel like I want the object to look as professional as I can make it, because I know that then designers will rely on my pictures and my, I guess, publicity advertisement to make their pattern known. And so I wanted to give a good shot. I don't want to do shortcuts or anything when I'm test knitting something, so that the pictures actually look good and it will look good on video. And so I ended up unraveling the little bit of neckline that I did after the long tail cast on, and I actually picked a slightly better looking cast on instead. This is the German twisted cast on, or old Norwegian cast on. It has many names, and I think it looks good on a ribbed collar. So if you're doing 2x2 ribbing, I think this is a good choice, the old Norwegian or German twisted cast on. I think a tubular cast on would have made it even better or made it even more polished, but this girl didn't want to do that. I didn't have mental space, mental capacity to learn a new trick. Didn't want to sit there with a tutorial and do the tubular cast on, because I've done that in the past and I feel like it required a little bit of attention, and so I just did the old Norwegian German twisted cast on. I still had to watch a tutorial, but I had tried before, and also it's a quicker cast on, I think, to memorize, and so that was my choice. Cool, I'm excited. I don't have, I think I don't have many sweaters or garments that are in just one strand of DK. My go-to is a combination of a fingering plus some mohair, and I do have a good amount of those sweaters in my winter wardrobe, let's call it. So yeah, I think this is a good change of pace, and just one strand of DK I think will be very comfortable, very soft, a good addition to my wardrobe. Last note here is that there are no short rows, and I was noticing because I was maybe pulling it a little bit. So I'm so curious and interested to see how the fit will be in the end. I think the vast majority of garments that I've knit in the past year have German short rows, or just short rows in general in the neckline. And what I mean is that all the necklines that I've worked recently have the usual shape of a higher neckline in the back and a lower neckline in the front. And this is achieved with short rows. It's just a way of making sure that back is higher than the front. And this pattern, since it has a high neck, which will anyway, I guess, be close to your neck, does not have short rows. So the back and the front are exactly the same. I've knitted the Novice sweater by Petite Knit, which has a very similar shape here at the neckline. It has a neck that you can do long or short or folded, whatever you'd like, but no short rows. And I actually can wear that easily and it doesn't bother me at all. So I hope, and I'm actually quite confident that this will fit me well, even though it doesn't have those famous short rows to lower the front, or I guess to make the back higher. So this is also a pretty short cropped sweater so far, but I pictured this to really cover maybe my entire butt, or like just be very comfortable with the split hem, long sleeves, very comfortable and cozy. And I know that when I block it, the neckline will relax quite a lot. I've seen blocked finished objects from a couple of other test knitters, and you can see before and after the 2x2 ribbed collar kind of really relaxed and stretched, and the fit became even more comfortable. So anyway, take a mental picture, and I'll see you in next episode with a more finished version of this sweater. The Tolsta Tee is back on my body for the last couple of things that I want to show you. The last active work in progress that I have and I'm knitting on is a knitted rectangle. I mean, at least this is what it looks like so far. And this is an in progress, an Italian autumn cowl. This is a simple design that I'm working on and I plan to release as a Ravelry download, similarly to what I did for the Italian summer scarf a couple of months ago. So this will be kind of the cowl companion. And if you're looking at it and saying like, this doesn't look like a cowl, you're right, it doesn't. This will be a double wrapped cowl that you can wear around your neck, and we're talking about something like this. For now, I haven't finished it, so it doesn't actually wrap twice around my neck, but my vision is that you will eventually connect this to the end of the rectangle and make it long enough to wrap it around twice. So I have a little bit longer to go, but as you can see, it's relaxing and lovely garter, plus some eyelets here and there, regularly spaced. And similarly to my Italian summer scarf, to know where the eyelet row needs to happen, you can just count your garter bump rows, and you know where, if it's time to knit an eyelet row, so you don't need to keep count of anything, you don't need to follow a pattern, you can just knit. This is a requirement for all my simple patterns that I'll put up in my life. And this, I think, is the pattern that I will suggest to the people who will come to my class next month in Bologna. There's a yarn crawl hosted by Wool Done. She's Julia. She has a lovely yarn store in Bologna, which is a city very close by to where I live in the northeast of Italy. So Julia is hosting me at her event, where I'll be kind of talking about how to read a pattern that's written in English, and this is targeted to an Italian audience, so I'll give some tips and tricks on how to read a pattern in English and how to interpret it. And I think we will follow this pattern together. We will cast on together during the class and maybe do a little bit of a initial piece of fabric. And yeah, I will publish it on Ravelry like I did for the scarf pattern. So if you want to also knit one of these, you'll have a pattern soon, as in next month, September. You can, of course, customize it in terms of the height. I like cowls to be quite squishy, so I made it quite tall. With a height that's quite tall. However, you can make it shorter, more like a scarf. And you can also maybe just wrap it once, like make it long so that it just wraps once around your neck instead of twice. I think it also would depend how much yarn you have. I had a good amount of this Arwetta, Filcolana Arwetta. This is technically a sock yarn, and I had a good amount. Anyway, I'm doing 2 strands, so that combined, they give me more or less a DK weight type of yarn. And you can, of course, for this cowl, use whatever weight of yarn you want, because anyway, you're gonna just wrap it around your neck to determine if you're happy with the fit. So truly, gauge is not an issue here. It's more like a guidance. So you can use 2 strands of fingering or 1 strand of DK or any other combination that you'd like. And I mean, if you change gauge compared to what I will recommend in the pattern, you just need to make sure, I think, that the height, this measurement here, is good enough for you and what you want. And then you just knit. At the end, to attach this edge so that it actually looks like a circular cowl that you can wrap around, you'll have a couple of options. You can bind off and then sew the two edges together with mattress stitch. But I think what I will put in the pattern is how to attach live stitches that you still have with the cast on edge, so that you just do it in one go. You cast on while attaching, which I think saves a little bit of time. Maybe I'll play with this. If this is a solution that I'll suggest in the pattern, I can also maybe record a little tutorial on how to do that. Yeah, this has been very fun to knit on. The only problem is that this is wool. Like, this is hot on your hands, and when trying it on, it's also not yet the season for an autumn cowl. This is what I think the name that I'll give it. I mean, this is still too hot to have wool close to your neck. In September, October, I think it will be perfect. I bike to my daughter's daycare, or I bike to many places, and so I tend to have maybe a lighter jacket or even like just a sweater, but I do need to be covered around my neck. So this will prove very handy in September, October, autumn, fall. That's it. Cool. Very thick needles. We are talking about US 9, aka 5.5 millimeters. So it goes by very, very fast. There are no increases nor decreases. So unlike the Italian summer scarf, which has some shaping to create a dainty little scarf, this one doesn't have any shaping. It's just a rectangle, so it's even easier than my other pattern that I uploaded to Ravelry, so even easier. My jam. And this lives in my other petite knit bag. I really like these ones. This has some more yarn, a gauge swatch. I really like these very small ones. Cool. I don't have any more projects to show you, although if you want to stick around, I have a little bit of acquisitions that I got in Florence, in Tuscany. A couple of weeks ago, I went for a work trip. It was lovely. I feel like sometimes people are not super excited to go on work trips, but mine was lovely. I really enjoyed it. It was actually in a very lovely location. It was in Tuscany. We're not here to talk about work, but we are here to talk about acquisitions. My acquisitions came from, I think, is it the most popular famous yarn store in Florence? Probably. It's called, it has a hair. It's called Campolmi Filati. It's one of the, I think, most well-established old yarn stores in Florence, but I think maybe throughout Italy. And what I got is a small little bundle of joy. This is cashmere. I had never ever used cashmere in my life, but it's so soft. This is, of course, a green color. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to pick up some green, but this is 100% cashmere. It's 25 grams per ball, so this is it weighs the same as a mohair ball, so it's like half your regular 50 grams ball of yarn, and it has 116 meters. So I would call it a fingering weight yarn. I have 4 balls, and I think this will be enough for a stole, a scarf or something. Green cannot go wrong. And the other thing I picked up at the store is a cone. This is my first cone ever. I always see cones of yarn around, as in like in other knitting podcasts, not around my house or anything like that. And this is my first cone. I believe this is recycled or reclaimed cashmere. So it's still very, very soft, but it has somehow been recycled, reclaimed, reworked. I'm not sure. It was a little bit cheaper than the other green cashmere that I showed you, but this should be enough for an accessory, a hat, something cozy. Maybe it could be something for my husband, since this I think is his favorite color for accessories. Cool, that would be it in terms of this podcast episode. I have a mess on this bed. I'm also quite hot. Probably you can tell that I'm a little bit sweaty. Apologize for that, but you can tell it's summer, and that will be it for today. I love you very much, and I will see you in a few weeks. Bye.